Hi everyone and welcome to the recap for week 10. This week our focus has been on professional relationships, understanding that it is a really important part of what we do as educators and teachers, and being able to form and nourish professional relationships with a whole variety of stakeholders, and particularly parents and families, but also the broader community as well. So this week's objectives were to be able to list different stakeholders that are involved in a child's learning. So this is important in terms of assessment too, because one of our tasks in step 2 is to actually be able to identify stakeholders. We talked in the Collaborate about the importance of thinking quite broadly, because we are focusing on digital professionalism. Pretty much anyone who comes into contact with the centre or kinder needs to sort of be under the umbrella of this policy. So we do need to think quite broadly about who the stakeholders are. But what's also really important when you're completing your assessment too is thinking about how you're going to engage with these stakeholders, particularly when you want to gather information from them. So we would love to see that when you identify the stakeholders and you gather your information in that part in step 2, that you're really thinking deeply about how you can collect information probably in the most authentic and most honest and real way that makes stakeholders and parents and families feel most comfortable to be honest in their feedback, and still, maintain that professionalism. I know that a lot of people are thinking things like surveys, which can be quite good because it gives that level of sort of anonymity that some people might want. But also, what's going to be really important in forming relationships and maintaining these professional relationships is we are asking for input from people, so we really need to then show them that their input is valued. So you would hope that within your step 2 and step 3 in particular, that you're showing, if you've bothered to grab a whole heap of parents together and you've bothered to survey them, that you then show evidence somewhere later on in your policy that you do actually check back and check those surveys and implement the suggestions somehow. Perhaps that's one of your points that you make later on in your assessment, is that you revise, the parent feedback. What we also have a look at this week is to explain the importance of collaboration between families and the wider community. So we all know that it's really important in terms of child development to have that strong connection back to not just families but wider communities. We think about the child being at the centre, and we have, parents and immediate families sort of in that outer ring, that very close ring to the child. But then, we've got extended family and schools and whatever, but then that wider community, it's really, really important to be engaged in the wider community and feel that sense of connectedness and feel that sense of home. And there's lots of research studies that have been conducted that show kids do better when they feel, firstly, the sense of connectedness. Obviously, you need a strong sense of connectedness to home and parents, but then to your centre or your school, and then to the wider community itself. So it's really, really important. Describe practical approaches to ethical partnerships. So a lot of our digital professionalism policy needs to connect to things like, considering the ethics, particularly when you're dealing with digital professionalism. So we talk a lot about collaborative partnerships, which is really important. And I'm just going to go to A2 for a minute and connect to, particularly in step 3, when we're thinking about our step 3, we need to remember that there's this point here, which is the final dot point, which says the policy must be clearly written for community stakeholders. Now, the policy is for people. We need to remember that. So we need to remember that this is a document, a working document, a practical document. We love those short, sharp, succinct sentences, very clear, straight to the point. Don't beat around the bush. Tell them, we pick up this policy and we understand it and we can use it and it's practical and it clearly identifies all stakeholders. We obviously get very connected to parents, but just thinking about broader community stakeholders as well. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed the content of week 10 and we'll see you in week 11.